Welcome to the Love Story with Lisa channel. Today, we're bringing you a brand new story. I only accidentally threatened the Crown Prince to vent my anger, but ended up with an imperial decree of betrothal and becoming his consort. Blurb. My father and his sworn enemy always stood at each other's throats, yet I ended up betrothed to that enemy's son. Then one night, while wandering near the pleasure house, I saw him step into the room of a beautiful woman from a foreign land. In my heartbreak, I drank myself into oblivion and, in a muddled daze, let myself go just once. The next morning, the story of me forcing myself on the Crown Prince had spread all over the capital. End of blurb. Please enjoy the story. That day, my father, as was his habit, had gone into the imperial study to argue furiously with his long-standing enemy. As for me and that enemy's son, His Highness the Crown Prince, we had grown accustomed to sitting quietly to the side playing chess. Then he suddenly said, "You're not allowed to take back a move." My face went slightly red. A moment ago, while he lifted his teacup, I had sneaked back and repositioned a piece I'd already played, but I still argued boldly, a dignified crown prince, squabbling with a weak little woman like me, truly unbecoming of a gentleman. Crown Prince Li Mayan gave me a languid, sidelong glance. A weak little woman who climbs onto rooftops and picks fights every day? That glance was clearly full of provocation. The world said the Crown Prince was gentle and refined, somewhat aloof, but always polite and courteous. Even the strict old Grand Tutor had words of praise for him. But in my eyes, he was clearly petty, narrow-minded, always liked to irritate me and butt heads with me, and his tongue was poisonous and scheming. I shot back, "Have I ever fought with you or broken your roof? What gives you the right to meddle in my business?" Li Mayan said leisurely, "As for causing trouble in the palace and throwing yourself on the ground crying, I suppose you do that less often." I was so furious I ground my teeth, slamming the table so hard the chess pieces went flying. You believe it or not, if I were to marry into the Eastern Palace, I'd make that place shake heaven and earth, storms and upheaval, not a single day of peace. He heard that and froze, his clear eyes like still water fixing on me with a flash of disbelief. Even though I'd said it out of pure anger without thinking, it was rare to see him so flustered. I felt immensely satisfied and kept right on threatening. "Today this county princess refuses to accept defeat. If you provoke me again, I'll petition His Majesty for an imperial decree of betrothal, and then you'll see what I'm made of." Who could have expected that before Li Mayan even had time to respond, the argument on the other side of the room had, without anyone noticing, already come to a stop. The emperor suddenly burst into cheerful laughter. "Excellent. This is exactly what I had in mind. Attendance. Draft the imperial decree." My father acted as if he were afraid I'd change my mind. His Majesty immediately put brush to paper and finished drafting the decree in the blink of an eye. By the time I managed to raise my hand to stop him, the imperial seal had already been stamped down. The moment the jade seal touched the paper, my legs went soft and I collapsed to the ground. His Majesty glanced over at me and smiled warmly. "Dan Yang. No need for such a formal bow. After this, we're all one family." Then he pointed at my father, laughing with great satisfaction. "Serves you right for arguing with me every single day. Go home and let your wife scold you. I trust she won't hold back." Surely my mother would spend the rest of her life unable to understand why, on that day, I had simply followed my father into the palace primarily to sneak a few pastries from the imperial kitchen, and managed to come home with an imperial betrothal decree. Just as His Majesty had hoped, my mother gave my father the scolding of his life. What was the deep enmity between my father, Marquis d'Inguan, and His Majesty? That story begins with my mother. My father and His Majesty were rivals in love as young men. Both had fallen for my mother. Sadly, my mother had a slow-witted nature and couldn't understand other people's intentions, so my father moved first and, with a few tricks, brought her home as his wife. At the time, His Majesty was still Crown Prince and refused to accept defeat. Not long after the wedding, he sent my father along with my maternal grandfather on a campaign to pacify rebels on the western frontier, a journey lasting 3 years. During those 3 years, His Majesty also took a wife. The truth was, he knew full well that if my mother had no feelings for my father, she would never have married so easily, yet the resentment still took root. After he had ascended the throne for a few years, His Majesty often faced sharp censure from my father and various officials of remonstrance. So after dismissing court each day, he would drag my father into the imperial study for an argument to his heart's content. Ever since my great-grandmother, Princess Shuahua, had passed away, I could no longer eat the pastries she used to make. By chance, I discovered that the imperial kitchen could replicate the same flavor. So I began following my father into the palace regularly to eat my fill, and would conveniently bring some home for my mother. This time, I raised a plate of osmanthus cakes and carefully presented them to my mother. "Mother, please calm your anger." My mother looked at me and let out a long sigh. "My child, how is it that your temperament is exactly like your mother's? Do you truly like the Crown Prince?" I opened my mouth to reply, fumbled around with words for a while, and in the end didn't argue back. The truth was, I did like Li Mayan. I had never told anyone. It wasn't easy to say aloud. I liked him simply because he was far too handsome. I had let my eye be caught by a beautiful face. My mother sighed again, a true daughter of mine, all right. I laughed awkwardly twice, and while mother was still sighing, I seized the moment to pull my father along and escape. My father was profoundly grateful and immediately slipped me half of his secret personal savings, his expression solemn. "Qinghe, I hope you mean what you say. Don't let that man's son live in peace." I counted the bank drafts, tucked them into my robe, stood on tiptoe and patted my father's shoulder. "Don't worry, father, money should be spent, and grievances should be repaid. I, Qinghe, will absolutely repay this debt of humiliation on your behalf." My father was so moved he couldn't speak. I added, "Consider this 250 taels as a deposit. Once I finish the job, I'll collect the other half." My father tried to chase me down and take the money back. I quickly called for reinforcements. "Yunnan, help me. I'll split 50 taels with you." A dark shadow appeared, blocking my father's path. My father stamped his foot in fury on the spot. Back in my room, Shen Yunnan quietly followed me back. I happily tucked away 200 taels in my private box, then split off 50 taels for Yunnan as promised. He wouldn't take it, so I stuffed it into his hand. "Buy yourself something good to eat. I can see you've been so busy lately you've grown quite thin." Yunnan lowered his eyes and pocketed the silver. "The county princess is going to marry the crown prince." I cupped my cheeks in my hands and said vacantly, "My mother always blamed father for indulging me and spoiling my temperament. Father always said as long as I was happy, but this time things have gotten truly serious. We've capsized the boat in the calm harbor." Yunnan asked, "The county princess is unwilling?" I paused and whispered back, "What I'm afraid of is that he's the one who's unwilling. He's probably cursing me 800 times over by now." Yunnan stepped closer. "The crown prince doesn't like the county princess." I replied, "Probably not, for real. Li Mayan always said I wasn't ladylike, that I caused trouble and had none of the virtuous bearing expected of a well-born young lady. I'd guess he likes the gentle, dignified type," Yunnan said calmly. "Then the county princess shouldn't marry." At that, I rubbed my hands together with a sly grin. "No rush, just wait for Li Mayan to proactively refuse the decree and call off the engagement. When that happens, His Majesty will be furious and give him a proper scolding." I chuckled to myself at the thought. Yunnan added, "By that time, the county princess will carry the reputation of having been too arrogant and disrespectful and gotten herself abandoned." I waved my hand. "Or how about you go out and buy me something to eat?" Yunnan said seriously, "The county princess just ate a considerable amount of pastries. Eating without moderation will harm your health. And recently, the county princess has been getting a little plump." I deflated. "Shin Yunnan, get out of my sight." It was the gentle warmth of early spring. The lakeshore shimmered, willows trailing their soft branches, a few tendrils reaching down to brush the water's surface, swaying in the breeze and rippling the water into small rings. I ran into Crown Prince Li Mayan outside the capital. He rarely left the palace in recent years. He wore white robes, tall and handsome as polished jade. Simply by standing there, he was already a living painting. It was not an exaggeration to say that if there hadn't been a woman at his side, I could have hidden behind a tree and watched him all day. But unfortunately, there was indeed a beauty standing beside him. I crept closer with Lian Xiao and Yunnan, and heard the woman sobbing, her shoulders trembling slightly, looking utterly pitiful. I clicked my tongue and tugged at Lian Xiao's sleeve. "Xiao, what a calamity! It seems this imperial decree has torn apart an unfortunate pair of lovebirds." "Torn apart what?" Before Lian Xiao could answer, a voice from behind gradually grew closer. I turned in embarrassment. The crown prince was standing there, his expression cool and composed yet strikingly handsome. "Your Highness the Crown Prince, what a coincidence. Are you here to fly a kite?" "Oh wait, here for a rendezvous with Miss Xiao." The one who had just wiped away her tears behind him was none other than Zhao Mingrua, the beloved niece of the current Grand Chancellor Zhao Qian, a gentle and refined young lady, exactly the type Li Mayan would surely favor. I smiled awkwardly. "I've been intruding, please excuse me." Li Mayan frowned with a light reproach. "What nonsense are you saying? It was only a chance encounter." Zhao Mingrua also spoke up. "County Princess, please don't misunderstand. There's absolutely nothing between the Crown Prince and me." I looked at the resentful yet meaningful glance Zhao Mingrua directed at me and felt displeased, letting out a cold laugh. A chance encounter that must have taken Miss Zhao quite a bit of arranging. The Crown Prince only said quietly, "A chance encounter that hurts people's hearts." Zhao Mingrua, who had never liked me, heard this and immediately struck back in irritation. "The county princess speaks too freely. I'm just a girl with a bit of innocent feeling in my heart. How could I compare to the county princess's cleverness in weeping and making a scene in the imperial study to cry her way into an imperial decree of betrothal?" Interesting. So in the eyes of the world, this engagement had been grabbed by me through scheming. Which made sense. Everyone knew that Miss Zhao was beautiful and talented, and had grown up alongside the Crown Prince as childhood companions. Everyone assumed she was fated to be the crown princess. Who could have expected that along the way, a scandalous county princess would cut in with an imperial decree? Humph. This county princess specialized in dealing with people who wouldn't accept their place. I immediately hooked my arm through Li Mayan's, dragging my voice into a coy whine. My dear, dear crown prince elder brother, why haven't you said a word while someone else has already rushed to be indignant on your behalf? Miss Zhao, don't let your anger harm your health. No one's heartbroken here. I'm only heartbroken for my darling crown prince. This maneuver was a mutual wound strategy. The moment I finished speaking, I'd already broken out in goosebumps all over. Li Mayan's entire body went rigid. He wanted to pull his arm back, but I held on tight. Zhao Mingrua was shaking with anger. Her eyes, already brimming with tears, were about to spill when the attendant behind her stepped forward and said, "Our young miss is gentle by nature. How could she withstand the arrogance of Danyang County Princess? But our young miss has grown up alongside the crown prince since childhood. That bond cannot be easily replaced. Please, County Princess, have some self-respect. In broad daylight, it's beneath your dignity to be pulling and clutching like this." Oh ho, rumor kills as surely as truth. Some aunt who was a favored consort and had visited the palace a few times. And already they were claiming childhood companions. When I was 5, I was already bickering with Li Mayan out in the courtyard. Where were you hiding? I was about to deliver a resounding rebuttal when a cold voice rang out beside me. Insolent. I started with a jolt, immediately backing 2 steps away like a frightened quail. The attendant behind was even worse off, kneeling flat on the ground. Though Li Mayan and I had frequent verbal sparring, he had never scolded anyone as insolent in front of me like this. After a long moment, I still hadn't quite recovered. Who was he talking to? He looked at me as if something were amusing, then pulled me back over. Danyang County Princess is this lord's betrothed. You dare stand before me and insult her? Do you think me too indulgent? I immediately clung to his authority to intimidate. Right. Do you think His Highness is too indulgent? He turned to Zhao Mingrua. This person is yours. It's not my place to punish her. I hope Miss Zhao will discipline her properly herself, and not bring disgrace to the Zhao family. I chimed in at once. Discipline her properly. Don't let people laugh at you. Li Mayan glanced at me, a flicker of amusement crossing his eyes. I gave a light humph and pretended not to notice. He continued, as for the matter Miss Zhao raised, this lord finds it inappropriate. I hope the young lady will extinguish her hopes as soon as possible and find a more suitable match. I tilted my nose up. He doesn't like you. Stop daydreaming. Miss Zhao stormed off in fury. I was indifferent, beautiful, talented, the finest of noble young ladies. All she knew how to do was cry and act coy. What a waste. Li Mayan said, indeed, who could compare to you? A wall fell on you, you struck your head and bled, nearly disfiguring yourself, and yet you didn't make a single sound. You hadn't even known that, you'd have thought you were mute. I said smugly, this county princess is a heroine among women, how could they compare? Lian Xiu stood behind me, covering her face to remind me quietly, County Princess, he wasn't praising you. Yunnan said calmly, County Princess is absolutely right. I patted his shoulder, only Yunnan understands me. Li Mayan glanced at the hand I'd placed on Yunnan's shoulder, his expression carrying a trace of displeasure. I boasted enthusiastically. What about it? My Yunnan isn't bad looking, is he? When he goes out, the young ladies all blush and look twice. Lien Xiao tugged at my sleeve. County princess, please stop. I don't understand. Pretty people can't be complimented? I was just about to mention the young gentleman in Baidi's Mingyue house. Lien Xiao hurriedly covered my mouth. At this point, Li Mian's expression had become extremely unpleasant. He said through clenched teeth, "Just you wait." I thought to myself, I'm waiting for you to proactively refuse the decree and get chewed out by your father. I kept waiting, and instead ran into Li Mian again inside Mingyue house. His expression was extremely interesting, and mine wasn't much better. What are you here for? I spoke first to seize the initiative. After all, I was a regular patron here. I'm here to find someone. Li Mian rarely stumbled over his words, his eyes shifting east and west. I said coldly, "Oh, really? Me too, I won't disturb you." I pretended to leave, then once he walked toward the room he needed to enter, I quickly found a corner from which to observe. The moment the door closed, I peered inside. A tall, graceful beauty in foreign garb, with a thin veil over her face, stood inside the room. My heart shattered in an instant. I hugged a jug of wine in the room of Bai Di, the owner of Mingyue House, and drank alone. As I drank, my eyes began to sting. Bai Di furrowed her brows with profound distaste. Getting this drunk over a man, you're worse than your mother was back in the day. Bai Di was my mother's bosom friend, and also the daughter of a deceased general. Having lost both parents early and with an awkward status, my mother had helped her establish Mingyue House as a place of refuge. Whether men or women, all who passed through Mingyue House were people of clean and upright character. Many among them harbored tragic fates and were temporarily taking shelter from the mundane world. I knew nothing would happen in that room, but I was still heartbroken. Just imagining Li Mian being tender and attentive toward another woman made my heart clench as if being squeezed. Bai Di asked, "If you already like him, why did you want him to proactively refuse the decree?" Seeing me cry as if I were about to stop breathing, Bai Di couldn't bear it anymore and seized the wine jug, lowering her voice. "The beauty in that room is a man. Don't be heartbroken anymore." I was stunned. Bai Di breathed a sigh of relief. Before the breath was even finished, I had burst into a wailing torrent of sobbing that nearly made her choke. He likes men, then I don't have a single shred of hope left. Bai Di was completely at a loss. She hauled me off and shoved me into an empty room to sober up. I wasn't resigned, complaining all the way. So what if he's a man? Mingyue House has plenty of men more handsome than him. Bai Di, I want the most beautiful person in this house to come drink with me and play the zither for me. I'm not going to die hanging from a single branch. I'll die hanging from every branch. The door slammed shut, cutting off all sound of crying and lamenting, but Bai Di still indulged me. Before long, a tall, well-built young man pushed open the door to my room. I wobbled upright from the bed, my head pounding like a hammer, unable to make out the other person's face clearly. I only felt that his eyes looked terribly like Li Mian's. I giggled. Bai Di really knows me well. This young gentleman suits me perfectly. And then lunged at him like a starving wolf. The young man dodged away. I put on a show of seriousness. I know, you only sell your art, not your body. Don't worry. This county princess won't do anything to you. just sit and have a drink with me." And then I touched his hand, fingers slender and long, knuckles cleanly defined. He paused, didn't brush my hand away, and asked coldly, "Where's the wine?" His voice sounded exactly like someone too. I pointed to the table of wine D had already cleared away. I wanted to go outside to look for more, but the peach blossom wine had already taken effect. My feet felt as if they were treading on cotton. I couldn't stand steadily, and pitched forward. He caught my waist quickly, his other hand gripping my arm, pulling me into his chest. A clean, cool fragrance spread around me. His arms were broad and warm. I squinted my eyes with a smile. "You came to me first. Don't blame this county princess for being forward." While he was still stunned, I kicked him backward onto the bed. He gave a faint groan. "Ah, I'm sorry everyone. What happened after that I can't bring myself to tell. It was truly a catastrophe. Otherwise, I'd never have ended up being escorted by Li Mayan himself into the imperial study." When he recounted my offenses in a cold voice before his imperial father, I fell completely silent. His Majesty turned to ask me, "Dan Yang, speak up. Is it true?" "I believe you." I replied, "Your Majesty is wise and perceptive. This minister's daughter woke this morning and did not see the crown prince anywhere. Your minister's daughter was too drunk and cannot clearly remember the events of last night. His Highness is using this matter to fabricate accusations. Does your Majesty have any evidence?" Li Mayan, as if he had anticipated this, pulled at the right collar of his robe to reveal a bite mark, vivid red and still not faded. "Right here," he gave a cold smile. "County Princess, would you like to bite again and compare, to see whether I've wronged you?" His entire expression was exactly the look of a person who'd been toyed with and discarded. If I weren't the one involved, I might have believed him myself. His Majesty put on a helpless expression. "Dan Yang, there's only 1 month left until the two of you wed. This impatient, are you? All right, let's move it up. 3 days from now, marry then, and be done with it." I checked the calendar just recently. There was a good date. I could see his acting was far worse than his son's. Coming out of the imperial study, I demanded blackly of Li Mayan, "Satisfied now?" He replied, "Seeing you dissatisfied, I'm very satisfied." I ground my teeth. "Just you wait." That evening I received another imperial decree at the mansion. My parents looked at me with an indescribable expression. My father stammered, "I heard, you forced yourself on the crown prince." My mother shoved him aside and asked me, "Tell me everything from the beginning." What could I say now? That I had mistaken Li Mayan for one of the young gentlemen of Mingyue House. That he'd been meeting with a man and then turned around and used this whole thing to force the emperor to move up the wedding to silence me. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I crushed the porcelain cup in my hand and swore, "Father, don't worry, even without the other half of the money, I'll make the Eastern Palace a scene of chaos, chickens flying and dogs barking. I will absolutely not let Li Mayan live in peace." On the wedding night, I wore magnificent red wedding robes and climbed up onto the roof of the bridal chamber. Below in the courtyard, a crowd of palace maids stood with faces drained of all color. Old Mama Zheng was urging Lian Xiu to try to persuade me down. Lian Xiu said awkwardly, "County Princess, better to come down. If you're angry, find another way to torment the crown prince. Don't make yourself suffer." The entire courtyard fell dead silent. The whispering crowd immediately turned to stone. Even Mama Zheng herself froze. A xiao, don't force yourself to say things. Only then did Lian Xiu realize she'd spoken out of turn. Her face flushed red and she bowed her head in silence. Li Mian returned very quickly. He wore matching red wedding robes, and beneath the moonlight he looked even more strikingly handsome. He looked up at me, brows slightly furrowed, his eyes deep, wine flushing his cheeks a faint red. He said coldly, "Come down." I said stubbornly, "No, if your highness also wants to come up here and enjoy the night air, wouldn't that be more pleasant?" He gave a cold laugh, waving his hand to dismiss everyone. "I'm telling you again, come down. And I'm telling you again, no. Today I've climbed onto the roof, tomorrow I'll get into fights. If you've married me, don't expect a peaceful life." Shen, he called my name through clenched teeth, syllable by syllable. I thought he was about to erupt in fury, but then, unexpectedly, he opened his arms and smiled. "Come down, I'll catch you." I was dumbfounded. The anger that had been choking my chest dissolved. A sensation like a startled fawn running wild took over my heart. In a daze, without thinking, I leapt straight into his arms. Crash! I jumped into his arms and the two of us fell flat to the ground with a thud. Slightly painful. I muttered, "Didn't you say you'd catch me?" Li Mian rubbed his forehead. "I drank a bit too much earlier, couldn't stand steady." I got up, brushed off the dust, and turned to leave. He said wearily, "Qinghe, lend me a hand." He really was drunk. His voice, tinged with wine, was husky and magnetic in a way that bore no resemblance to his usual manner. I turned back and looked at the hand he extended, pale white and slender. I pulled him upright. He took advantage at once, leaning his whole body against mine, gently stroking my hair. "Why's your hair down?" My phoenix crown headdress had been yanked off in the tussle. He, not at all annoyed, rested his head on my shoulder. His breath warm. "Is your rebellion tonight because you're angry I came back so late? Is Qinghe impatient to be with this husband tonight? What would you have me do?" I couldn't believe my own ears. This cold, self-restrained man, now that he was drunk, he'd turned into a scoundrel. Li Mian, sober up a bit. I'm telling you, don't think you can take liberties just because you're drunk. I'm not easy to bully. I shoved him away and ran into the room, about to slam the door. Before it could close, he blocked it. He scooped me up, chuckling. "What are you afraid of?" I was defiant. "I'm not afraid." "Humph. Then let go of the blanket." "No. You were nothing like this the night you were drunk. And you're not like this in your ordinary days either." Li Mian didn't bother arguing anymore. He simply yanked the blanket I was clutching. I screamed, "Li Mian, what are you doing? Don't think I won't dare hit you, crown prince or not, I will not hold back." Li Mian bent down and kissed me. Don't ask me how that night went. I was deeply, profoundly regretful. I lay in bed staring at the canopy above me. It seemed Li Mian had already left. I wanted to curse all 18 generations of his ancestors, but no matter which one I thought of, it would be an act of sacrilege. Just as I opened my mouth, I discovered my voice had gone hoarse and rough. I tried to sit up, dragging my boneless body in search of water. Pushing aside the bed curtain, I came face to face with Li Mayan sitting neatly upright at the table. I immediately dropped the curtain and rolled back to bed. He poured water, sat beside the bed, and watched me drink the whole cup before finally speaking. "Last night was my fault. Next time I'll be gentler." Still that cold, self-controlled manner of his. I blurted out, "There's a next time?" He froze, then said there could be or there couldn't, and neither was right. His ears reddened, no matter how you looked at it. It seemed like I was taking advantage of him. Am I wrong? Don't tell me you don't know what you're like when you're drunk. And you said you'd be gentler, but then, a series of hazy images surfaced in my mind. I pointed at him, unable to get the words out. If I've done wrong, may heaven punish me, but please, not by making my nose bleed right at this moment. Just kill me now. Li Mayan pressed his lips together and handed me a handkerchief, refilling my cup. In the end he laughed. I grabbed a pillow and threw it straight at him. "What are you laughing at? Get out." He obediently set the pillow aside and left. Not long after, Lian Xiu came in with a washing basin. She hesitated and asked, "County Princess, did you sleep well last night?" I said coldly, "Could you try saying something normal?" Lian Xiu grinned. "Right now in the palace noble consort Zhao holds the Phoenix seal. You don't have to go pay your morning respects. His Highness says today you should just rest. Tomorrow Mama Zheng will begin teaching you how to manage the Eastern Palace." Right, after Crown Prince Li Mayan's birth mother had died in difficult childbirth, the position of Empress had remained vacant. Noble Consort Zhao, the daughter of Grand Chancellor Zhao, had been repeatedly recommended by numerous officials for elevation to Empress, but His Majesty had stayed silent. Even though she had borne a prince 8 years ago, she had only been given temporary charge of the Phoenix seal. The specific reason was known only to His Majesty. I sighed, "Can I really not keep being an idle layabout?" Lian Xiu said happily, "Yes, Crown Princess." In the days that followed, Li Mayan was busy. Aside from the formal visit back to my parental home, I rarely saw his face. At night he slept in his own chambers as well. My father remained cold toward him, but my mother was just like me. One look at that face and she was already won over into smiling ear to ear, constantly urging me to give her a grandchild soon. I wanted to drag her to the Eastern Palace to see what I was actually doing. Under Mama Zheng's affectionate discipline delivered with a stick and a lecture, I became as meek as a chick, diligently learning everything about managing the inner quarters. Mama Zheng had originally resented me for the chaos on the wedding night, but she had gradually softened. She was an old attendant who had served the late Crown Princess. After the Empress passed, she had stayed in the Eastern Palace to care for Li Mayan. She was getting on in years, and I didn't dare provoke her anymore. Lian Xiu was both moved and admiring. "I've never seen the county princess so well behaved and adorable before. For the sake of Crown Prince Li Mayan, you really know how to endure." I grabbed a brush and flung it at her, hitting her skirt. Mama Zheng gave a soft reprimand. "Crown Princess," I had already figured out her nature, soft with gentle handling, firm with stubborn resistance, so I put on a display of wheedling. "Mama, I'm so tired. Looking at account books for days and days, my eyes are blurring." Sure enough, she relented with a light cough. "Very well, old servant will go out tomorrow to buy some things. Crown Princess may rest for one day." My eyes lit up. "Then Mama, remember to buy me some of that red peach blossom wine, it's my favorite." Mama Jing said, Crown Princess is truly different from His Highness, fond of drinking wine. I grinned to myself, because when he gets drunk, he goes out of his mind. Mama Jing tidied the account books with a soft laugh. His Highness is normally restrained about wine and never exceeds a cup. When he's had a little, he just talks more and speaks more honestly from the heart. Only on the wedding night, with someone trying to get him drunk, did he actually drink that much. Ah. So Li Mian's true self when honest was a scoundrel. Lian Xiu heard this and was furious yet didn't dare say so. I felt not the slightest bit of guilt. Once Mama is gone tomorrow, my chaos and mayhem plan will start up again. Lian Xiu whispered, County Princess is planning something? I smiled with dark intent. Everyone in the Eastern Palace is dry and serious. As Crown Princess, it's my duty to bring some entertainment. When I set up a gambling table in the courtyard, only a few of the younger palace maids dared to join in. I didn't know how to play much, so I invented a game, shaking dice and guessing high or low. Under my pressure, Lian Xiu and a few maids played along. I won 2 rounds at first, then lost several in a row, until my coin purse was completely flat. I waved them off, you all keep playing, I'll go stand watch outside. I sat at the doorway kicking stones, thinking I'd borrow a little money from Lian Xiu soon to win back what I'd lost. As the one who'd started this, I couldn't walk away empty-handed. Before long, Li Mian returned. He was in court robes, tall and elegant, his black hair neatly bound beneath a jade crown, incomparably handsome. Seeing me, his expression mixed pleasure and displeasure. He walked toward me. I ran out to meet him. Your Highness is back. Are you tired? Would you like to come in for some tea? He looked at me for a moment, then asked helplessly, What have you gotten up to this time? Before I could answer, the courtyard rang out with cheers and shouts, the jingling of coins clinking together. He looked inside, his expression black as the bottom of a pot. He was unhappy, I was delighted. I called out twice more, Your Highness. Your Highness, come look. He turned around, his face dark. I folded my arms over my chest and smiled brightly. I haven't forgotten my old promise, you know. Li Mian was too furious to speak. Crown Princess, why don't you just play yourself? Weren't you waiting for me? I froze. The feng shui here doesn't suit me. I lost everything. Give me another 2 days to win it back. No need, he took my hand and led me into the courtyard. Let me win it back for you. Everyone, no cheating, I yelled. No one cheat, if anything goes wrong, I'll take responsibility. I clutched his hand. You said you'd help me win it back. He smiled lightly, and gestured for the silver to be brought out, but unexpectedly, he lost everything. I snickered behind his back, see? You're even worse than me. Li Mian was speechless, unable to believe it. Lian Xiu signaled everyone. They quickly gathered the money and slipped away. I walked around to the front and clapped. Well, would you look at that? The crown prince of 1,000 talents, and he lost everything just like that. He didn't speak. He just circled his arms around my waist, lifted me up, and sat me on the table, with him sandwiching me between the table and himself. This position was dangerous. I pushed at him. What are you doing? He leaned close to my ear in broad daylight and said, Nothing. Just that Mama Zheng is coming back to tutor you. I went pale. you're going to report on me?" He didn't answer. He lightly tilted my chin up. Mood remarkably good, then walked away. With his old tricks not working on him anymore, would use them on his father. I ran to the imperial study. "Imperial father, the crown prince isn't attending to proper matters. He was gambling with the crowd and lost everything." His Majesty turned purple with fury and summoned him for a thorough scolding. I ate pastries, drank tea, played chess, leisurely beyond words. I heard His Majesty say, "You've lost all the dignity of the imperial family, and you couldn't even win one round." Li Mian said, "This son knows his fault. If your Majesty has leisure, please hurry and give me a grandchild to hold." His Majesty choked and coughed. Li Mian, not changing expression, "Qinghe is busy recovering her money. She has no time to think of this son." I knew this was going badly and quickly retreated. "Imperial father, I'm making silver ear mushroom soup. Let me go check or it'll boil dry." Back in the Eastern Palace, I dutifully ground through the rest of the account books on my own. Mama Zheng returned and set 2 jars of peach blossom wine on the table. I smiled gleefully and reached for them, but got my hands slapped away. "Finish the books first, then drink." I could only grit my teeth and study until well into the night. Just as I let out my 13th yawn, Li Mian arrived, smelling of wine all over. Mama Zheng and Lian Xiu exchanged a glance without a word, gathered up all the account books, and fled. I screamed after them, "Mama, give me back the books. I can still read 10 more volumes, don't leave me alone with him." Running to the door, I was caught around the waist by him. He leaned in close and laughed softly. "Am I not worth more than account books?" I wanted to cry. He nuzzled his face against my neck and said, "I've been dealing with court affairs these past few days. There's trouble on the western frontier. Imperial father is upset and dragged me along to drink." I asked, "What are you usually like after you've had too much?" "Asleep, so please." "Your Highness, go to sleep right now and stop bothering me." He held on tighter. "Would you stay with me? I've missed you very much." His words were too straightforward. My face went red. Remembering Mama Zheng's words, that drunk, he'd be more honest, I felt a mischievous impulse. I turned to face him. "You've missed me." "Why?" He muttered unhappily. He'd been too busy to even see her. It was as if it were her fault. She hadn't come looking for him either, hadn't shown him the slightest concern. She was so heartless, he was utterly forlorn. I nearly burst out laughing. What kind of crown prince sulks like a little aggrieved concubine? I stood on tiptoe and kissed his cheek. I was wrong. I thought I was treating a soft little puppy, forgetting that under the wool was a wolf. He immediately clasped me and kissed my lips. Before I could react, I found myself lifted onto the table. Everything on it clattered to the ground. I shrieked, "My peach blossom wine!" 1 jar shattered with a crash. He held up the remaining jar. "Want some?" He smiled so beautifully that I went blank. I nodded. He opened it, drank a mouthful, then transferred it to my mouth. The sweet wine spread across my lips and tongue, and my mind went completely numb. I'd truly brought this on myself. After that incident, I derived one guiding principle: as long as I caused trouble in the Eastern Palace, Li Mian would come and disrupt me in return. If that was the game, then fight fire with fire. Li Mayan stared fixedly at the bowl of strangely colored soup in front of him, lips pressed firmly shut, brows furrowed. I pressed a hand to my chest and put on a heartbroken look. This is a gift from the bottom of my heart. How can your highness look down on it so? I mischievously held up the memorial he'd just had in his hand, and said sincerely, Your Highness, this is snow ear mushroom soup I cooked with great care over a long time. If you don't at least taste a little out of consideration for me, I'll be very sad. Li Mayan, without giving any consideration, looked at the color of the soup. Did you simmer it for the whole day and night? He lifted his head and looked at me. I raised an eyebrow and looked right back at him. The two of us stared each other down for quite a while. Shi Wufeng, who had been standing to the side the whole time, appeared to have made up his mind. From nowhere he produced a silver needle and was about to probe the bowl of soup. I snapped furiously, What do you think you're doing? Wufeng trembled. Your crown princess, this soup's color is truly rather suspicious. This subordinate is merely taking precautions. I waved my arms, shooing Wufeng out. Li Mayan burst out laughing and, with great difficulty, scooped a spoonful of snow ear mushroom soup, drank it, then held out his hand. I've eaten. Can you give me back the memorial now? I waved the memorial in my hand, about to pull a few more tricks, when I noticed it was a document related to the spring hunt. My eyes lit up. So then what I was told, that I could do whatever I wanted and you'd agree, that's also real. Yes. My plan had succeeded. I laughed with satisfaction. A gentleman's word is his bond, sealed in stone. It seems your highness has no choice but to bring me along. Li Mayan said coldly, 4 words, beauty clouds the mind. I'm not exactly a brilliant person, I react slowly, but when I'm free I like to think things over, and I can usually figure out about 7 or 8 parts of most things afterward. For example, the fact that I was marrying Li Mayan had actually been calculated by His Majesty long in advance. He'd only been waiting for the right opportunity. After all, my maternal grandfather had been the great general who guarded the frontier. My father Marquis Dinyuan had accumulated many military achievements, and I was the sole heir. Marrying into the imperial family was the safest arrangement. For example, the relationship between His Majesty and my father was nothing like the fire and water surface they put on, arguing all day. It was more like they were weaving an invisible net beneath the quarreling. After the Western Frontier Rebellion, the Marquis Dinyuan household could no longer stay on the sidelines. For example, some people in court ate the emperor's pay yet were not truly with the emperor, reaching their hands into both the front court and the inner quarters, even daring to collude with foreign powers. For example, just as my father had let my mother spend half her life in leisurely comfort like a carefree little dumpling, it was clear that Li Mayan intended to do the same for me. He actually did care about me a little. That afternoon, I finally caught an opportunity to boast to Lian Xiu. Li Mayan said I was pretty. Lian Xiu was astonished. Crown Prince Li Mayan doesn't seem like someone who gives compliments. What exactly did he say? I pointed the wooden practice sword at her. She quickly dodged sideways and raised her own sword in defense. Crown Princess, since you can't beat me, are you trying to distract me? That won't work. I flipped my grip, spun around to her back, and pressed the hilt against her neck. I just want to share a little marital happiness. After all, our Lian Xiu still has no one in her heart. Lian Xiu was indignant. She spun around and knocked my wooden sword upward with her raised arm. Before I could guard, her sword was already at my neck. It was fine, except the sword that flew up nearly hit. Li Mayan had just stepped into the courtyard. Fortunately, Shi Wufeng behind him swiftly swung his hand and cut it in half. Seeing the expression on Li Mayan's face, grim, and his fists clenched, I immediately told Lian Xiu, "Run quick." Looking back, she was already long gone. I also started to run, but Li Mayan stepped forward fast and grabbed my clothing. I laughed awkwardly. "Your Highness, how nice to be free and visit me here. Something the matter?" Li Mayan's expression was blank. "Came to discuss marital happiness with you." For some reason, Li Mayan was in a bad mood today. He had someone transfer the memorials to my chambers and sat in silence reading, not saying a word. I pulled Shi Wufeng out to the outer hall to ask what had happened. Wufeng lowered his voice. Today His Highness went out of the palace to handle some affairs, apparently heard a few rumors. I'm still unclear myself. Wufeng quietly drew from inside his robe a story pamphlet and pressed it into my hand. "Read this and you'll understand." I glanced at the title, and my face immediately darkened. Lively County Princess and Her Handsome Bodyguard. What on earth is this? Flipping to the introduction, as expected, the female protagonist was based on me, this county princess of some renown, while the male protagonist was not Li Mayan but Shen Yunan. The summary described roughly how the county princess and her personal bodyguard had grown up together as childhood companions, with deep feelings between them, and that even the county princess's fancy footwork and martial moves had been personally taught by the bodyguard. But the county princess was flirtatious and promiscuous, frequently visiting pleasure houses, which broke the bodyguard's heart. Moreover, the two had vastly different social statuses, so when it came time to marry, the bodyguard withdrew. The emperor issued a betrothal decree, and she turned away to marry someone else. In the end, the two were separated by an unbridgeable chasm, forever gazing at each other from afar. A tragic romance. I threw the pamphlet straight to the floor and scolded furiously. What utter nonsense. Shen Yunan was to me both a bodyguard and an elder brother. He was an orphan my grandfather had brought back from the western frontier. His martial arts were also taught by my grandfather. Later, when grandfather retired and returned home, he left Yunan at the Marquis's household. My father, seeing that Yunan was quiet but reliable, kept him by my side as a protector. That's all there was to it. I'd barely entered the palace, and people outside were already fabricating stories like this about me and Yunan. Who had done this? Wufeng replied, "Please calm your anger, Crown Princess. His Highness has already sent people to investigate. They'll find the mastermind soon enough." I told Wufeng to step back, picked up the pamphlet, walked in front of Li Mayan and asked, "Do you believe it?" Li Mayan calmly continued turning over the memorial. "Yunan, you call him by a very intimate name. You've never called me that." My head buzzed. I said grimly, "Li Mayan, what do you mean?" Li Mayan gave a self-deprecating smile. "Nothing, don't worry. I've always seen Yunan as an elder brother. There's not a shred of other feeling between us. I'm only saying this once. Whether you believe it is up to you." I believe you. The pent-up anger I'd been about to release was doused with a bucket of cold water. The anger dissipated, only a profound exhaustion remained in its place. Li Mayan always had a way of making me feel like throwing punches at cotton. I spun around in place, stamped my foot, and then decisively picked up the pamphlet and read it from cover to cover. To be honest, whoever wrote this pamphlet had very fine literary style. and the story was compelling. I guessed that someone from the Marquis's household had provided the material. Some events had really happened, some had been embellished, some were pure fabrication, truth and falsehood intertwined. Difficult to distinguish. At dinner, I still hadn't put the book down, reading while I ate. I even asked Li Mayan sitting across from me, "Say, Your Highness, have you finished this story? Your concubine finds it very interesting." Li Mayan's face darkened. I only glanced through. "I say this, when Your Highness has time, you should read it. Good way to pass the time. Concubine will tell you a bit. This part is very well written," Li Mayan said coldly. "Nothing." I nodded. "Then later your concubine will bookmark it for you." It seemed Li Mayan had decided to sleep here tonight, but I didn't bother paying attention. I was reading a suspenseful passage, so I grabbed some snacks and tea and settled on the edge of the bed to keep reading. At some point it got late. Li Mayan removed his robe and walked over to me. A shadow fell over the page. I waved my hand. "Your Highness, move aside, you're blocking the light." Li Mayan yanked the pamphlet from my hand and threw it outside, threatening, "Read it again and I won't take you to the spring hunt." I gave in. After all, I already knew the ending anyway. I sat up, removed my outer robe, and comfortably burrowed into the blanket, wrapping myself all the way around. Li Mayan tried to pull half the blanket from me and failed. He had someone bring another blanket. The candle was extinguished. In the darkness, all grew quiet. I closed my eyes, drifting near sleep, when Li Mayan suddenly spoke. "A few parts of what's in the pamphlet are true." I murmured vaguely, 4 or 5 parts of it, roughly. For instance, he taught me martial arts, used to carry me on his back through the streets when I was little, and made rock candy for me to eat. Is the relationship between you and him really that good? That close, more or less? Li Mayan was quiet. My consciousness began to blur. He extended an arm and pulled me into his hold. I didn't even have the energy to think about when he'd stolen the blanket. I could only let him bend his head down and press a kiss to my forehead. It seemed that afterward I heard him murmur something, unclear whether it was a dream or real. I only remembered a few vague lines. "What about me then? When you were small you always loved to quarrel with me. And I once made you a rabbit lantern. Then, resigned, well, that's how you always are, so thoughtlessly carefree." I dreamed of all those past quarrels and of the rabbit lantern. From childhood, Li Mayan and I simply never got along, and I wasn't boasting about that. Back then I was genuinely a fair-skinned, rosy-lipped little miss whom everyone who saw her couldn't help but adore. Even though His Majesty had no fondness for my father, every time he saw me he couldn't stop himself from picking me up and pinching my chubby little cheeks. As for Li Mayan, from childhood he always wore a stone-cold expression. While I was cuddling in His Majesty's lap wheedling him for things, he as Crown Prince sat to the side reading, looking at me with disdain. I wasn't used to being treated coldly by anyone. So the moment it was just the two of us, I confronted him. "What kind of look was that you gave me? Is it because His Majesty dotes on me more than on you, so you're jealous?" Li Mayan let out a cold humph. "No studying, no prospects, only knowing how to act spoiled and get what you want?" He grew up very handsome, and at first I also liked him, had wanted to play with him. But after hearing those words, I erupted in fury and argued with him fiercely. Afterward, His Majesty scolded him, but I was still not appeased. Back home, I told my father I wanted to read books. My father was simultaneously astonished and delighted and immediately invited the most renowned tutor in the capital, but literary study gave me a genuine headache. All those, therefore, and whereby, and whereas, spinning around in circles made me deeply uncomfortable. Before long, I threw down my brush and told my father I wanted to learn martial arts. This was even easier. Both my maternal grandfather and my father had many talented people in their service. The martial arts instructor was not Yunnan alone. Later I discovered that knowing fists and feet alone wasn't enough, so I went looking through the study for books on military strategy to read further. Since I couldn't yet read all the characters, I voluntarily went to invite the tutor back. When I felt I had learned quite a bit, I ran in front of Li Mayan to show off. He still said coldly, "Just a dog by the kennel gate and a chicken by the coop, nothing worth noting." The disappointment in her eyes flickered for a moment, then immediately turned to fury. She threw everything she could get her hands on at him, including the late Empress's phoenix head hairpin. At the time I didn't know what it was. I just saw his face go pale, kept arguing stubbornly, and then ran off. Later when I retold it to my mother, she described the hairpin as belonging to the late Empress and told me her story. I felt I had done wrong and intended to apologize, but I didn't know how to open my mouth. Right at that moment, the young Su from the Grand Tutor's household came blundering in. Su Ziqian had always looked at Li Mayan with displeasure. One reason was that his father constantly held Li Mayan up as an example, the other was that he seemed to like Xiao Mingrua. His head got hot and he dared to say reckless things inside the palace, saying Li Mayan was born of a different mother, and that from the time the Empress had become pregnant with him she had grown weaker and weaker, until finally she died giving birth to him. Seeing him speak such nonsense, I immediately launched myself on top of him and beat him, hitting and cursing at the same time. For saying that, I'll hit you. Anyone who claims he was born of a different mother, try me and see if it doesn't curse the speaker. Dare say that again and I'll show you. No one nearby could stop me. In the end it was Li Mayan who came and pulled me off. He told me I was causing trouble, that as a young woman, behaving like this was crude and improper. I was furious. I shoved him away, "I don't want to see you anymore," and walked off. From then on I stopped following my father into the palace for visits. I ran into Li Mayan again the following year at the Lantern Festival. I had gone out with Lian Xiao and Yunnan to look at the lanterns when I spotted him also out for a stroll. He wore dark robes with a fox fur cloak, and by now his figure was very tall and imposing. Under the lantern light, his features were like a painting. He stood out strikingly in the crowd. But I walked straight past him without so much as a glance. He also said nothing, only silently followed behind. I spotted a rabbit-shaped lantern and pulled Lian Xiao and Yunnan to try guessing the riddle together. But all three of us had mediocre learning and the lantern was won by someone else. I walked up and down past many stalls and there wasn't a single similar rabbit lantern left. The sky was growing darker, and I trudged home dejectedly. I had just changed clothes and was preparing for bed when my mother put a cloak around me and told me Li Mayan had come to the mansion to find me. Bewildered, I went to the front hall. He handed me a bizarre little rabbit lantern. I accepted it while hugging my cloak, looked it over, and said, "It's ugly, where did you find it?" Li Mayan, who had been silent all this while, finally spoke, argue with me for a few lines and then leave in a huff, bad mood and all. I was dead sleepy and wanted to collapse. I handed the lantern to my mother and went to bed. But after that I'd gained the upper hand. and frequently came into the palace to cause havoc again. The spring hunt that year had many high officials and nobles attending with their families. Seeing the bustling encampment, after being cooped up in the palace for so many days, I finally felt my spirits soar. I especially dug out my riding outfit that I hadn't worn in a long time and tied my hair back in a ponytail with cloth ribbon. From afar I spotted my parents. I shook off Li Mayan's hand that had been holding mine and ran happily toward them. Yinan had also come. He looked rather haggard. After chatting with my parents for a while, I couldn't help but ask him what had happened. Yinan said, "If the county princess has happened to hear any rumors, please don't take them to heart." I laughed. "Yinan, do you still not know me?" Yinan gave me a faint smile. I added, "Could it be that father has been holding back your wages and making you do heavy work? Look how much thinner you've gotten." My father heard this and rapped me on the head once. "What are you saying? Is your father that kind of person?" I said, "How would I know?" After all, Yinan and I had once divided up father's private savings between us and even ratted father out. He could easily be retaliating against Yinan while I wasn't at home. Father was just about to say something more when Li Mayan walked over and took my hand. After performing the courtesies, he unexpectedly produced a cherry from inside the tent and popped it into my mouth. I had no idea what was happening, but under his threatening gaze, I had no choice but to swallow it. Sour, so sour. I covered my mouth and spit out the pit, unable to stop myself from complaining. Li Mayan said with an expressionless face, "Yes, very sour, isn't it?" My mother stood to the side laughing with delight. Even my father, who was keeping up a show of seriousness, couldn't hold back his laughter. I said to Li Mayan, "Are you being childish?" Li Mayan said nothing. My mother mediated, all right, Your Highness, please bring my daughter back to her position, the hunt is about to begin." The opening ceremony of the spring hunt was nothing particularly special, no different from previous years. Except that His Majesty appeared briefly and then claimed ill health, withdrawing to the imperial tent and delegating command to the crown prince. Noble Consort Zhao, who rarely ventured out from her inner quarters, was seen this time, though the young prince had not come along. Li Mayan dressed neatly for the hunt, riding a blood-sweat stallion of fine pedigree, his bearing imposing and handsome, broad-shouldered and slender-waisted, manner unrestrained and elegant. Truly a sight to behold. I saw many unmarried young ladies flushing with color, and became so furious I stuffed my mouth full of cherries. Li Mayan glanced back at me, the dark eyes holding a flash of amusement. "Want something? I'll hunt a catch and bring it to you." No need. I still hadn't managed to spit out the cherry pit when I turned my head away. "I'll go hunt for whatever I want myself." Li Mayan smiled even more brightly, following the signal horn to lead the company out. I called Lian Xiu over to help me choose a horse. Lian Xiu looked worried. "Crown Princess, maybe we should not." I said, "Don't worry, Lian Xiu, it's only the first day. Nothing will happen. Just let me go play for one day." Lian Xiu had no choice but to pick an extra horse to follow along with me. Straight into the hunt grounds, and truly, enemies meet on a narrow road. Not long after riding in, I ran directly into Su Ziqian. The kid had grown up now, his face handsome and his bearing that of a scholar. He probably still clearly remembered the beating from years ago. Seeing me, his face went rigid. "Why are you here too?" Shouldn't you be in the tent being good? I raised the bow in my hand without knocking an arrow and made a pretend aiming gesture at him. Obviously I'm here to hunt, can't you see? He glanced behind me. Why didn't you bring more people? What if you run into danger? I was genuinely surprised. Did I beat the stupidity into you? Why would you be worried about me? Look at that scrawny little frame of yours. Worry about yourself first. Su Ziqian glared at me yet still stubbornly insisted on accompanying me, saying he'd brought several guards just in case. I told him, you've learned to think a little more than before. Su Ziqian was somewhat annoyed, shot me another look, seemed like he wanted to say something, but kept holding it back and didn't say a word. At that moment, a rabbit leapt out of a grass patch in the distance. Without much ceremony, I immediately drew an arrow, nocked it, and let it fly, hitting dead on. I said smugly, "Do you see how skilled I am?" Su Ziqian gave a dismissive humph, "Just a wild rabbit. What's there to be smug about?" I said, "Don't say I didn't warn you. Follow me, and watch out for going home empty-handed." "Humph, let's just see." "Put it to the test then." To prove my words, for the next stretch I didn't yield him a single bird or beast. As the sun began to set, his expression had already become quite unpleasant. I thought, after all, he was 2 years younger than me, and had genuinely come with good intentions to escort me. It wouldn't do to let him lose too much face. Just then, from behind a tree, a startled deer suddenly bolted out. I said, "Consider it your kindness in escorting me. I'll hunt this deer and give it to you." I urged my horse in pursuit. The deer ran fast, but how was it to escape my fine steed? Before long I had locked onto the opportunity. 2 arrows released simultaneously, striking the deer's side. It fell on the spot. In very good spirits, I turned slowly back. Halfway through, I was confronted by a sight that nearly stopped my heart. I had witnessed with my own eyes Li Mian lifting Zhao Mingrua up onto a horse. Lifting her up? I blinked several times to confirm I wasn't seeing things wrong. Fire immediately surged up within me. Hot blood rushing straight to my head. Without thinking, I spurred my horse directly toward them. Reining in, I stared down at Li Mian from above. My expression must have been as terrible as it possibly could be, because he froze for a moment, forgetting even to open his mouth to explain. The anger rose higher and higher. I jumped off my horse and moved to pull Zhao Mingrua down. Li Mian quickly stopped me. "Just now you almost accidentally shot her. She twisted her ankle." I pointed at the guard standing nearby and demanded furiously, "Doesn't she have people with her? Why did it have to be you specifically to carry her? You want to take a side consort, don't you?" Li Mian froze again. Then gave what appeared to be an involuntary rueful laugh, bending his head and lowering his voice. "If anyone else so much as touched her she'd sob and wail. Was I supposed to just leave her stranded in the forest?" Zhao Mingrua still had tears caught at the corners of her eyes, her voice mixed with a half-sob. "Crown Princess, please don't misunderstand. Mingrua only ran over because she had something important to discuss with His Highness, and nearly walked into your arrow." I said coolly, "Then is the discussion finished? If it's finished, go back on your own. Surely you don't expect my husband to walk your horse and escort you home?" Zhao Mingrua didn't answer, and also didn't move. I glared at her. Just then, Su Ziqian happened to ride over. I immediately gave him the spotted deer I had hunted, conveniently telling him to escort her home, saying that today counted as a favor to them both. Ignoring Su Ziqian's awkward expression and Zhao Mingruo's resentful glance, I firmly pushed them both off. Li Mian stood behind me in silence with his arms folded, watching me make my scene. Lian Xiu, very perceptive, led the guards to step far back, leaving the two of us space. I didn't want to deal with him anymore. I turned and jumped back onto my horse to leave. Li Mian, seeing this, didn't bother with his own fine horse at all. He just blocked the head of my horse and asked to share a ride, holding out his hand to ask me to pull him up. I refused. He then offered to walk leading the horse and escort me back on foot. The sky was getting dark, and I didn't want to drag this out any further. I grudgingly yielded. He took full advantage at once, circling his arm around my waist, seizing the reins from my hands, pulling me close into his chest. Foolish. Li Mian bent close to my ear and whispered. I drove my elbow sharply backward and heard him give a faint groan. You know, Su Ziqian doesn't like Zhao Mingruo at all. Then what was this about him sneaking a white jade hairpin and blushing when I caught him, saying he wanted to give it to her? Then why would he go out of his way to say bad things about you in front of me? Do you think he'd dare say such things carelessly? I froze. So that's why every time he saw me he'd start to speak and then stop himself. Which means I hit him and also hurt his feelings. That's truly pitiable. Li Mian laughed. It's all right, he always thought you liked me. I said indignantly, I don't like you. He exhaled softly. But I like you. Those words, his lips almost against my ear, barely a whisper, yet they struck my heart like thunder. My pulse pounded like battle drums, my whole body went rigid. Not knowing how to respond, I only felt my face, my ears, my neck all burning with heat. Well, then I like you too. Li Mian hadn't expected me to reply like that. The hand holding the reins froze. Then he burst out laughing, held me even closer, turned his head and kissed my cheek lightly. Say, husband, and let me hear it. I turned my face away. How are you pulling tricks without even having drunk wine? Far in the distance, the fires of the camp were already visible. The night settled in, bringing with it a strange stillness. Li Mian stopped teasing me and said seriously, tomorrow, don't go running about freely. There may be a fierce battle coming. Zhao Mingruo came to find you because of this, right? I sighed. Grand Chancellor Zhao is old and has grown muddled. I can see that noble consort Zhao herself has little enthusiasm either. I'm afraid only a few powers in the western frontier are still pretending to support him. And yet he can't read the situation clearly. Li Mian laughed softly. You understand it quite clearly. I answered, of course, this county princess comes from a military family. A daughter is no less than a son. Li Mian kissed my cheek again, gently. Take care of yourself. Qinghe. Everything unfolded even faster than I had imagined. Zhao Qian had apparently already learned that Zhao Mingruo had been secretly sent by noble consort Zhao to seek out Li Mian. Fearing that a long night brings too many dreams, on the second night he had already raised his forces to surround the imperial tent. His thinking was, capture the king first to seize the army, lay hands on his majesty and all other matters would be easy to resolve. And his maternal grandson, second Prince Li Muheng, needed only to wait inside the palace for an imperial edict of succession. However, when he stepped into the imperial tent, he found there was no sign of his majesty inside at all. The person seated there was Prince Anshin, His Majesty's half-brother, who normally resided at his fiefdom. The real His Majesty had quietly returned to the palace long ago, right after making his brief appearance on the first day of the hunt. Seeing the situation turn against them, the followers of Zhao Qian fought desperately to open a path of blood and allow him to retreat. The rebel forces, colluding with the people of the western Shitua tribes, attacked from inside and outside, covering his escape. My father and Li Mayan led troops in pursuit. The rebels fled all the way to the Shitua encampment. Back in the year after the Western Frontier Rebellion, my father and maternal grandfather had discovered something suspicious. A few small states led by Shitua. How could they possibly hold out against our court's great army for a full 3 years? From this they had concluded that there must be an enemy power that had infiltrated the court, striking from inside and outside at once, which had made the situation so disastrous. I sat in the tent deep in thought, worried it was not only Grand Chancellor Zhao Qian alone. Shitua harbored great ambitions and would certainly not place all their bets on one person. Truly cutting the problem off at the root was the real difficulty. The sounds outside gradually quieted and the sky began to show the first pale light in the east. Just then, Yunnan walked in. I asked him where Lian Xiu was, and suddenly, a volley of cold arrows pierced through the back of the tent. I couldn't react in time, one arrow grazed my arm. Yunnan lunged to shield me. I sensed the arrow was laced with medicine, my head began to spin immediately. Then I felt someone strike me heavily on the back of the neck, and I lost all consciousness. When I awoke, I was still in a tent, but judging from the furnishings, I was clearly in a Shitua encampment. Apparently I had been unconscious for a very long time. Truly baffling. If you wanted to capture someone, you'd go capture the crown prince. A group of people entered the tent. The one in the lead was dressed rather splendidly. Seeing me awake, the corner of his lips curved into a cold smile. The crown princess of the Central Plains is truly beautiful. I replied, Your Highness speaks the Central Plains language quite fluently. Third Prince Sula. Hearing this, Sula broke into laughter. I've heard that the county princess of Marquis de Nguyen's household is unlike ordinary young women. Truly, the name holds true. Too much flattery, I raised my voice. Though your people have already reached their hands all the way into the Marquis's household, it would hardly be fitting for me to still be a useless piece of work. Would it? Shin Yunnan. Yunnan stepped inside, saying nothing. Sula said, You even know who he is? I wanted to raise my hands but was tied, so I could only lift my chin. An orphan boy brought back from the western frontier. Naturally one would investigate his identity thoroughly before keeping him by your side. Did you think everyone else was a fool? A killing light passed through Sula's eyes. His hand came to rest on the hilt of the blade at his hip. If you've known this from the beginning, why keep him? Know your enemy and know yourself, and you'll win every battle. Evidently he can't stay anymore. Wait, I cut him off. What is your purpose in capturing me? You are Marquis de Nguyen's only daughter and also the crown princess. Taking you in this battle is nothing but advantageous. I looked up at the top of the tent, momentarily at a loss for words. What did Zhao Qian promise you? If he succeeds, more than 10 cities will fall into Shitua's hands, not to mention all the other benefits. If he fails, he can still serve as a military strategist for Shitua and provide assistance going forward. Sula reached over and sharply jerked the rope binding me. And as for you, you should not have lowered your guard so easily with your status. Even if this battle hadn't happened, you'd still be worth exchanging for a few cities. The dealings between Shitua's king and Zhao Qian, that must have been going on for 20 years by now. He worked his way up all the way to Grand Chancellor, and not a single promise he made was ever fulfilled. You still trust him? How laughable. It's not a loss either way, right? Sula straightened up. But as you said, know your enemy and know yourself. Grand endeavors naturally must be approached step by step. All right, I don't want to waste any more breath with you. I settled into a more comfortable sitting position. Since you've kept me here because I'm useful, kindly bring me something to eat. Also, leave Shen Yunan here to look after me. I'm not accustomed to other people. Of course, if third prince isn't at ease, feel free to post a guard. That person standing behind you, that beautiful attendant, looks quite good. I like that one. The military situation was intense. Sula had no desire to waste time sparring with me. The person standing behind him seemed to be a trusted aide. Hearing my request, he made no objection, and after making the arrangements, he departed. I told Yunan to loosen the ropes a little and bind only my hands. Then said to the beautiful attendant, I once saw you at Mingyue House. The beauty mark at the corner of your eye is lovely. The attendant laughed, nearly blinding me. Being caught cross-dressing by you, I apologize. You're following Li Mayan's orders. Of course Changwu could also follow his orders. He glanced at Yunan. After all, even fifth prince takes orders from him willingly. Yunan frowned slightly. He didn't seem to like that title much. I said, he only wanted to take his mother and sister away. He didn't want to be threatened by the Shitua royal household any longer. Changwu said, that's not difficult. Because he needed Yunan to bring the crown princess here. Third prince has already had lady and the princess brought to the camp, as terms of the exchange. Correct. Yunan was not a simple orphan. He was the son of the Shitua king. His mother was a Central Plains handmaiden of low status, kept by the Shitua king because of her beauty. She bore him one son and one daughter but was valued by no one. Sula's maternal clan, on the other hand, was immensely powerful. He was ambitious, capable, and ruthless. Seeing that Yunan had the appearance of a Central Plains person, he used the lives of Yunan's mother and younger sister as leverage and sent the child, young and unknowing at the time, to the side of my maternal grandfather to work as a spy. Sadly, Sula was too arrogant and contemptuous in his reading of people's hearts. Many things had long since slipped out of his control, yet he still imagined himself holding the winning hand. I asked Changwu, how many people do you have here? Changwu laughed, you overestimate me, only a few dozen. That's enough. With my hands still bound, I struggled but managed to fish out a red jade piece from inside my robe. Combined with father's people doing a few small things, shouldn't be difficult. Changwu took it and only smiled without answering. I said, receiving gifts and giving gifts in return is the way of things. This method isn't only something the Shitua people know how to use. The Shitua king is old and gradually losing real power, while Sula is excessively bellicose. Shitua appears to grow stronger by the day on the surface. In reality it's only gilded on the outside and rotting within, long since worn down by the habit of constantly invading east and west and expanding territory. In less than half a month, Shitua's main forces had suffered one defeat after another. The granaries at their encampment were burned to the ground, Zhao Qian was killed, and before long they hauled me out as their final card. Sula personally escorted me to the observation tower. Below was a dense black sea of people, a strict, orderly formation, yet I felt no fear at all. Leading the formation were my father and Li Mayan. To be honest, Li Mayan in full battle armor looked truly, genuinely handsome, imposing and magnificent. I couldn't stop myself from admiring him for several extra looks, until a gleaming sword was placed straight against my throat. Sula said, "I have truly underestimated you. Tell your father and husband to withdraw their forces immediately and surrender 5 cities, otherwise I'll take your head right now." I desperately wanted to fix him with a look that said, "What an idiot," but he was standing behind me and I couldn't turn around. So I made an extremely exaggerated expression and shouted down toward the base of the tower, "Father and Your Highness, can you see the characters written on my face?" Complete silence on all 4 sides. My father and Li Mayan stood in silence looking up toward me, and even Sula had no idea what I was planning. I pointed at my own face, loyal heart, righteous soul, dying for my country. Taking advantage of the brief moment Sula was stunned, I suddenly moved, seized the sword from his hand and swept it straight toward his neck. But he had spent years hardened in battle and his reflexes were lightning fast. I only managed to leave a shallow cut on his neck. Both sides on the observation tower immediately threw themselves into close combat. Sula flew into a towering rage and, disregarding everything else, raised his bow and arrow and aimed straight at me. The tower was narrow with nowhere to dodge. I hurled the sword toward him and spun around to leap off. The only thought in my head was how to protect my head when I hit the ground, when I saw both my father and Li Mayan come racing in. Li Mayan had anticipated my intention, moved a step ahead of my father, rode in on horseback to intercept me in the air. The horse was startled and reared up sharply on its hind legs, sending both of us tumbling off. Li Mayan held me tightly, shielding my head. The 2 of us rolled more than 10 times before stopping. My whole body was aching and sore, but fortunately I'd sustained no serious injury and my hands and feet could still move. I gently pushed Li Mayan aside and said quietly, "I'm all right." Li Mayan said with difficulty, "I have something very wrong with me." My father rushed to send people to escort both of us back to camp. Li Mayan had taken the fall protecting me. His back striking hard into the ground, his injuries were no light matter. The moment he got back to camp, he lost consciousness. Word was that my reckless action had bolstered the already surging morale of our army. They launched an attack that shattered Shitua's main forces into total rout, captured Sula's head, and drove straight into the Shitua royal court. Cornered, the Shitua king was forced to hand over the complete list of spies he had planted in our court in exchange for a ceasefire. Aside from Zhao Qian, the remaining agents were not individually powerful, but they posed a latent threat. His Majesty issued an edict: "There is no need to pursue and annihilate to the last man. We shall withdraw and return in triumph." When Li Mayan came to, the first thing he said to me was that I was reckless. And for a good long stretch of time after that, he refused to speak to me. I had to coax him gently, "You know me, I'm experienced. I never die easily." "No, that's not right. The truth is, I trust you. I trusted that you would absolutely catch me, so I dared to take the risk." Yes, being captured was partly to help Yunnan, but there were also father's people in the Shitua encampment, and your people there too. I was captured so that they could coordinate from inside and outside and win the battle quickly. You saw how I stirred the entire Shitoa base into chaos. Wasn't that impressive? Stop being angry. I promise I won't cause trouble anymore. Does it still hurt? Is the medicine bitter? I'll go get some honey for you to eat. Li Mayan was truly angry. Even as his wounds healed nearly all the way, he still refused to speak to me. I was so miserable I went back to my parents' home. My father told me that when he'd seen me with a sword held to my throat on the observation tower, Li Mayan's face had gone paper white, both hands clenched, his whole body trembling. My father sighed and said that he supposed he had grudgingly accepted this son-in-law. And my mother said, husband and wife argue at the head of the bed and make peace at the foot of it, then kicked me out and forbade me from sleeping over. Returning to the Eastern Palace, Li Mayan sat cold-faced waiting in the bridal chamber. He held out for some time and finally spoke first. Only a few days of pouting and already you've lost patience. Lian Xiu understood perfectly, led all the palace maids out, and thoughtfully closed the door behind her. I walked over boldly and kissed the corner of his mouth. I really do know I was wrong. Li Mayan's eyes softened. I seized the chance to circle my arm around his waist. I like you the most. Li Mayan glanced at me, really? I immediately raised my hand in solemn oath, really? I only like you the most. I want to stay by your side forever. Li Mayan finally smiled, bowed his head, and kissed me gently. I love you. I looked up at him, my eyes shining with brightness, my heart soft as cotton. Luckily, I'd finally coaxed him around. Really? I asked softly. Then are you willing, life after life, to love only me? He raised his hand and stroked my hair, his voice gentle yet resolute. Even if in the next life I am a common man and you a celestial immortal, or I am poor and humble and you a sheltered noble daughter, I will still find you and love you again. My heart felt first tightly squeezed, then burst open, petal by petal of soft flower blooming within my chest. Outside the window, the moon had just risen. Moonlight filtered through silk curtains, falling in streams over his shoulders, and also spilling across my flushed cheeks. I burrowed into his chest, my voice small as a kitten's. Then tonight you're not allowed to go to the study. Li Mayan raised an eyebrow slightly, tilted his head and looked at me. Oh, how would I dare disobey your lady wife's command? I deliberately gave a soft little, humph, good that you know. If you dare act cold toward me one more time, see if I don't actually run away from home. He burst out laughing, bent down, and pressed a soft kiss to my forehead. Then I must hold you very tightly, in case when morning comes, my lady wife has turned into the wind and blown away. I couldn't hold back my laughter, lifted my face, and right at that moment he bent down and kissed me, long and deep. In the quiet space, only the sound of my heart pounding and our breath entwining, inseparable. End of main story, extra. Li Mayan, I was named Crown Prince the moment I was born. Very early on, I understood that my birth mother had not died of a difficult labor. Zhao Qian had used noble consort Zhao's hand to cause her death. The emperor knew, but the court and inner palace were like two sides of a chessboard pressing against each other. One move affected the whole game. He could not move against the Zhao household, he could only compensate me with the position of Eastern Palace heir. I also knew early on that the daughter of Marquis Dingyuan would be my future crown princess. His Majesty trusted the Marquis, though one couldn't quite say where that trust had begun. After all, In years past, Marquis de Yuan had taken away the person His Majesty had held in his heart. But later I came to understand, in the course of state deliberations, aside from unavoidable matters of national affairs, Marquis de Yuan only liked to boast about his wife and daughter. His Majesty had once said with feeling that this was what Marquis de Yuan's singular remaining pursuit amounted to. Perhaps he could not bear to give the treasured little daughter he cradled in his palms away to me. His Majesty had not been able to protect my birth mother, a gentle and kind woman. Could he protect the little county princess who had been pampered from childhood? The first time Shenxinghe came into the palace, she was a tiny, soft, rosy little bundle. Everyone who saw her couldn't help but smile with warmth and affection. She knew it very well and liked to wheedle and charm until everyone made way for her. Even the emperor liked holding her. Though the emperor loved me, he had never indulged me the way he indulged her, because I was the crown prince, the future heir to the throne. What I needed was not the deep warmth of a father-child bond, but the commanding imperial dignity of an emperor, cold and aloof. After the emperor left, Shenxinghe ran up to me, in a spoiled, wheedling voice asking me whether I was jealous. Looking at her, I involuntarily thought of my birth mother, killed by a cunning scheme. I said coldly, no studies, no prospects, knowing only how to act spoiled and get what you want. If that's all you have, how will you survive in the treacherous depths of the inner palace? The moment I said it, I knew it was too much. She was so little, at the most innocent and carefree age of all. Why should she have to think about scheming for survival? She went red with anger, like a glutinous rice ball dropped into a wok of oil, jumping up to argue with me point by point. I was 2.5 years older than her. Arguing with her was truly beneath my dignity. And then I was scolded by the emperor over it. Marquis de Yuan came to ask me, "What on earth did you say to my daughter? What charm or potion did you give her?" She came home and immediately demanded to study, her face scrunched up like a misshapen steamed bun, but she stuck with it and persevered. I was slightly stunned. I had thought she would go home and report my offenses, and have the Marquis come to chastise me. After some time, when she no longer appeared, I heard she had switched to practicing martial arts, tumbling about everywhere with a body full of bruises, headstrong and stubborn. Marquis de Yuan laughed and told the emperor that the little girl was so eager to read books on military strategy but couldn't read all the characters yet, so she'd swallowed her pride and gone back to the doorstep to beg the tutor to return and teach her. I imagined that small face all scrunched up like a steamed bun and couldn't stop myself from laughing. Marquis de Yuan turned and fixed a glare at me. "You can still laugh. Isn't this all your fault?" It was all my fault. The little county princess who laughed and talked so easily. Yet, she had stayed away from the palace for a long time. So long that I could only see her a few times from a distance at court banquets. When we met again, she had grown up, become a beautiful, clear-eyed young woman. That time, perhaps feeling she developed some real ability, she came to me with pride to show off, her arms still marked with bruises that hadn't yet faded. I had intended to say something complimentary, but the words that came out of my mouth became, "A dog brave by its own kennel, a chicken bold by its own coop, nothing worth noting." A flash of disappointment crossed her eyes, and then it immediately transformed into fury. She threw everything she could get her hands on at me, including the late Empress's phoenix head hairpin. She didn't know what it was, she just saw my face go pale, still argued with me stubbornly and arrogantly, and then walked off. But then she didn't truly resent me after that. Every time she saw me, she always wanted to approach, but then hesitated and pulled away. That day I was with the Grand Tutor in conference, when a palace attendant reported that Shinshingha had beaten the young Su of the Grand Tutor's household. The attendant told me quietly in private, before the Grand Tutor could know what was happening. I made an excuse to keep the Grand Tutor in the Eastern Palace while I went to the Imperial Flower Garden myself. On the way there, the attendant told me the full story. Arriving, I saw Shinshingha had the young man pinned to the ground, hitting him and cursing. She was fighting for my sake. I felt a nameless surge of gladness, but she was too close to him. Did she not know that men and women should maintain proper distance? I pulled her away and reprimanded her sternly, saying she shouldn't be so crude and improper. She stared blankly at me, then shoved me away in fury. I don't want to see you anymore. She turned and walked off. For the first time in my life I felt myself flustered. The young Su was helped to his feet, and he stayed silent, watching her retreating figure. I suddenly realized he liked her. I didn't know what I was feeling. I only knew that she was the person who would one day become my crown princess, and beyond that, I had never thought further. After that incident, she truly didn't come anymore. She didn't even come to eat the pastries she liked most from the imperial kitchen. Not even the court banquets saw her attend. The Lantern Festival was the birthday of Marquis de Nguyen's wife. She'd go out into the streets to look at the lanterns after the evening banquet. I waited for her at a stretch of road she would have to pass through. She saw me and walked straight past without even a glance. I could only silently follow behind. She spotted a rabbit-shaped lantern and pulled Lian Xiao and Yunnan with her to try guessing the riddle. But all three of them had mediocre learning, and the lantern was won by someone else. She walked all the way through every stall and found no similar lantern remaining, and trudged home in dejection. I went back to that lantern stall. The owner was packing up. I pressed a gold ingot into his hands and asked him to teach me how to make a rabbit lantern. Afraid I'd run out of time, I made it in a hurry and then carried it to the Marquis's household. She was half asleep and had been reluctantly gotten up by her mother. I gave her the lantern. She looked it over and frowned. "It's ugly. Where did you find this?" I, having been silent all this while, finally spoke, argue with me for a few lines and then leave in a huff. She was sleepy to the point of nearly dying, handed the lantern to her mother after taking one look, and went to sleep. I was furious enough to quarrel with her for a few lines and then stormed off. I've always excelled at patience, but only with her does it always fall apart. After that, she started following her father into the palace more often, saying she'd heard the imperial kitchen had some new pastry. She'd bring the pastries to my study, sit beside me, and challenge me to chess. Her chess was terrible and she liked to cheat. I'd scold her for a few lines, she'd erupt in anger. That day she tried one of her tricks and I caught her red-handed. She sulked and threatened to marry into the Eastern Palace and torment me for the rest of my life. I stared at her, unable to look away. She thought she'd provoked me and grew even more smug, threatening more fiercely. But what I was thinking was, could there really be such a good thing? The emperor, never expecting to stumble upon such a windfall, immediately issued the betrothal decree. She went weak-kneed to the ground. I was so pleased I couldn't stop the corner of my lips from curving, and got a warning glare from Marquis de Nguyen. Zhao Mingrua came to find me and said she liked me, that she'd be willing even as a concubine. I was about to refuse when I caught the furtive, sneaking glimpse of Qinghe's shadow. I immediately stepped out, and she immediately said sourly, "We're a miserable fated pair." Zhao Mingrua was about to get another dig in, and she immediately wrapped herself around my arm, saying a few cloying lines that left me genuinely dazed. After being scolded by me when she was small, she had never wheedled and clung to me again. Now she was forcing herself to put on a show of it, and I was completely unaccustomed to it. Yet somehow I still found it endearing. After that, she was the same as ever, one new thing every day, sometimes in a sulk, sometimes making a scene, turning the whole palace into a beautiful uproar. I thought, if she were by my side like this for my entire life, being emperor wouldn't feel so burdensome after all. She is the sunlight of my life. So, Qinghe, I don't need you to be proper and virtuous as the world expects. I only need you to keep making trouble. Keep giving me headaches. Keep being mischievous as before. Doing so for an entire lifetime, that would be just fine, the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to Love Stories with Lisa for more stories. Thank you so much.